My next guest on the Self-Leadership Success Summit is Chris Reed, sometimes known as Chris Mohawk Reed for reasons I'm sure you'll be able to deduce. Chris is an expert on social media, LinkedIn, all things personal brand and marketing. So I thought he was a really good person. I thought it was a good idea of mine. I thought he was a great person to invite to talk to us about social media, personal branding, marketing from a self-leadership perspective. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you, Andrew.
So, Chris, tell us just a little bit about yourself, all right? Where you from? Where are we now? What do you do?
Sure. So I'm a Geordie, born in Newcastle, for those people who don't know what Geordies are, in the north of England, not in Australia. And I spent 20 years in London. I escaped Newcastle because obviously Newcastle has no job, so I went to London, which is a big thing for people to do in the UK. And then I had enough of the weather, the taxes, and the underground, and came to Singapore. And I was an entrepreneur in London, entrepreneur here. This is where we're now for 10 years. 10 years I've been here, not matching your 14 years, but 10 years I've been in Singapore. And we have 7 different brands now, Black Marketing. Black Marketing being our hero brand, and our latest brand being Rockstar Keynote Speakers, which actually focuses on female keynote speakers. So that's where we are now.
Very good. Now, it's interesting that you immediately identify yourself as an entrepreneur,
Totally.
right? You know, entrepreneur, I'm going to show off now, from the French entreprendre, an undertaking, which used to mean a journey, coined by French economist Jean-Baptiste Say as undertaking the risk of business.
Yes.
All right? So you
Risk
immediately
is good.
Risk is good. Not everybody thinks that. When did you know you were an entrepreneur?
About 9 years old.
About 9 years old.
Because my grandfather's an entrepreneur, my father's an entrepreneur, my uncle was an entrepreneur. And literally the best moment was my 18th birthday, my uncle, who's a fantastic entrepreneur, took me around Marks and Spencer's in the UK and showed me exactly what he did, which was basically retail marketing. And he said, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong, that's wrong. I went, wow, I would never have looked at it in that perspective before, but he brought a retail experience. I've worked with people like Tesco's and Sainsbury's, and he could tell exactly what was wrong with their marketing. Well, that was genius. And on my 18th birthday, he did that. And it's like, you get that kind of inspiration from 3 very kind of figureheads in your life. Then you basically go, wow, who wants to work with somebody else? You basically have to be an entrepreneur yourself. I want to have my own direction, my own passion, my own purpose. It took me another 12 years to figure out what that was going to be, because I had various different ideas about what it could be, and I knew I had to work out my corporate experience first, build my network up, my connections up, my experience, which is why I went through lots of jobs in my 20s to build the experience so I could launch my first entrepreneurial venture when I was 30. So I think it's quite key to actually do that.
Okay, so self-awareness, I am an entrepreneur,
Yep.
but the realization I can't just launch yet.
When I was 20 years old, I couldn't just go, right, what do I do now? Oh shit, what do I talk about? What do I sell?
So you have to, I'm of a slightly older than you. I'm an age where you have to do your apprenticeship, right?
Yes.
I started work 10 years old in my father's hardware store. Got that apprenticeship piece, right? So what was your apprenticeship and what did it teach you?
So I was 16 and I worked at HMV. So whilst other people were taking summer holidays and not working weekends, I worked on Saturdays. I worked on Thursday evenings when they used to open on Thursday evenings in the UK. And I used to work all the summer. So literally 6 days a week. And for someone who's passionate about music like me, I loved it. And I asked them, can I go to the head office in London and learn from the marketing people down there? I said, yeah, of course, fantastic. No one else has ever asked that before. So I went down to London, stayed at my grandparents' house and went into HMV every single day for a whole week and just learned so many things. Like, wow, this is what happens down here. And it was amazing what happened in the head office and then what happened in real life at the retail store in Newcastle. They weren't the same.
So you saw that gap. You saw that.
Yes.
So what's driving you here is a real level of curiosity.
Totally.
And one of the things really common, I think, with the people that have been successful is that curiosity and that willingness to ask the question, put yourself out there.
Correct.
Or don't ask for permission.
Yeah,
Right. Don't ask for. Yeah, all right. So that's cool. So you're working in a music shop. You see the disconnect with marketing. So from HMV, other key experiences before you?
So I went to a nightclub. I got to do with music. Then I went to a concert venue. My first job in London, and that was like the Geordie connection because I applied. The general manager there was a Geordie, and it didn't matter about my qualifications at all. He liked my personality. The fact that I wanted to go leave from Newcastle, go down to London, and start my career. It didn't matter what I got paid there. I was going to watch some concerts, and I was going to meet concerts and market concerts with a great concert venue in London. And I learned so much about partnerships because we had no budget. So that's where I started learning about partnerships. And my first venture was actually going to be a partnership marketing agency 10 years later, but I learned the rudimentals at Hammersmith Odeon because we had the venue. And we had a venue over Hammersmith. We had been a Hammersmith flyover. Millions of cars go past every single day. So you have a media vehicle which you could then exchange with newspapers and magazines and radio before internet even existed, where you get exposure. So I was able to do partnership deals, marketing straight away. So that's where I really got stuck into deals. Deal negotiation. This is what's in for you. What does that want back? And people were so open-minded to it because it's all about partnerships.
Now that's another mindset that not everybody gets. This concept of collaboration.
Yeah. It's key when you have no budget.
Even if you have a budget, why spend the money if you don't have to?
Very true.
It's interesting. One of the interviews here on the Self Leadership Success Summit is a trader, a guy who puts out this is the future, and you tend to think about trading as dog eat dog, and yet if you've seen that video or that interview. Or if you haven't, you'll when you watch it, you'll see that he had a real collaboration mindset, even with competitors. He could do a deal with a competitor and say, I've got this ship and I haven't got anything on it. You put something up.
Yeah.
So, where does that come from? Because a lot of people that has to have an abundance and a risk embracing. Because if you do collaboration, you open yourself up to somebody doing the dirty on you, right?
But that because if you do have no budget, then you do have to think more laterally and more creatively. Well, how will I achieve my marketing objectives? How will I sell these tickets? How will I market the brand? And so you go out to people who are already targeting those people through their channels and say, let's do a deal. You want my channels, my customers, I want your channels and your customers, and literally doing deals. So even when I was at radio station, when I left at the concert venue, I did deals for the radio stations as well. And even when I went to work in newspapers, I worked for the Times, the Sunday Times. Even there, we had a budget, but I still did big partnerships and promotional partnerships. And like you say, why spend the money if you could do a partnership? I had the biggest and most trusted real estate you could possibly ask for, the Sunday Times, and I could barter that with somebody else. I had to negotiate two ways there. Negotiate internally with the editor, because the editor said, nope, I'm not being associated with that. Nope, not being associated with that, because he knew the power of his brand. That's where I really got an understanding of brands. Like, okay, the Sunday Times is like a brand that really basically can make a difference, can make or break businesses, but he won't give it to anybody. You have to earn that kind of trust. So that's very interesting about trust and about awareness of that brand's power and ability about what you can do with it and what you can't do with it.
So there's a distinction, isn't there? There's collaboration, but not with everybody.
Correct.
That you've got to know your own value first.
Very important.
Key part of self-leadership, of course, that self-awareness. Totally. What's my value?
Yes.
Now, as a youngster with nothing but your enthusiasm, what was your value at that time?
I mean, the value is what I had. I realised very early on, again, being self-aware, that it wasn't about me. It was about what I represented. So Hammersmith Odeon, people wanted the concert venue. Radio stations, people wanted the exposure. Newspapers, they wanted the kudos of the Sunday Times, and they wanted the exposure in the newspaper. So realised pretty early on that actually it wasn't about that. So my first business, when I was 30, was a partnership marketing business between two brands. And I was brokering those two brands to come together and doing a partnership between, so it could be a financial services brand, it could be a leisure brand. It could be an on-pack brand and a leisure brand or an entertainment brand coming together, for example. So I pretty realised that it's the power of brands. Brands were key. It wasn't about me, it was the fact I could broker these brands when nobody else could.
Wow. Okay. Now you have a pretty strong brand now. We were talking off camera before we started. Your personal brand. When you turn up, people know.
Yes.
In fact, you walk in a room and they go, "Oh, you're Chris, right?"
Yes.
So
not even in a room. I could be in an airport lounge in Shanghai. I could be on a plane. I could be walking down the street in Hong Kong. Literally, and people will put me out.
So, are you I mean, it's not going to work for me, but are you are you recommending that we all grow a mohawk?
No, it's everyone. What I believe is everyone has a metaphorical mohawk.
Yes.
So everyone has something. You have things like, for example, you met Karen Jacobson at the GSS summit, for example.
Yeah.
You said that she has the GPS. She's the GPS girl. So she built an entire career on being the personal brand GPS. But that's not what makes her money.
Just in case you didn't know, she is the Australian voice of Siri.
Yeah.
So
and also the TomTom, people like that. So recalculating. America. She's
Yes.
the American voice.
Yes.
And she's amazing at doing it. But she's built a keynote speaking career and a voice career and a concert performer career on the back of being the GPS girl, and she brands herself the GPS girl. So her mohawk is a GPS girl.
Yep.
So everyone's got something they can use to market themselves. They've got to be, as this summit's all about self-awareness, be self-aware what that is. And I realised pretty quickly that my mohawk would stand out in Singapore and works very well when you go to a conference or works very well when you go to networking. And it's an icebreaker. It's a wonderful icebreaker.
Very good, very good. So you became an entrepreneur at 30, right? What was your first business?
My first business was a company called Cocktail Marketing, where we put two, because it's all about putting brands together. So, and then we basically did that for a few years. I sold that after a couple of years, and then we did another one, and then another one, and another one, and that continued until I was 40, nearly 40, and then I hadn't seen the sun for many, many years, and I came to Singapore. So I needed to see the sun.
You've seen
so
it.
I lived in London for 20 years. And also because London has a very mentality of like, let's deal with London, as we're now seeing with things like Brexit. It's very much about, let's deal with London. I never got any briefs for Europe the whole time I was there. My first brief here in Singapore was the whole of Asia Pacific.
Right.
And so the mentality here is let's do business with everybody. You know, because we're too small to actually just do business with ourselves.
Right.
So there's great self-awareness amongst, I think, Singapore in terms of you can't just do business amongst Singaporeans. You've got to go to Malaysia, Indonesia, you've got to go to China, you've got to go to India, you've got to go to America, you've got to go to Europe, you've got to go to Australia. And basically that's what I took on straight away. And I thought, wow, this is amazing, this embracing of other countries and reaching out to people, which is why we've got the best airport in the world at Changi, because it enables you to actually do that.
And again, a global mindset. I mean,
Yes.
globalism is not hugely popular with some politicians these days. However, with the internet, you know,
As an entrepreneur, you have to have a global mindset. You really do.
Yeah, you'd be mad not to, right? So, as an entrepreneur, what are some of the habits that you've developed that you think have led to your success?
I think I definitely go back to the curiosity thing. I basically never settle. I'm always working, I'm always thinking about things. You know, on Christmas Day I launched the Rockstar brand, for example. I was communicating with people on LinkedIn. It's like you're always thinking, how do you communicate, how do you network, how do you find things out, what are the angles here, can I launch another brand over here, can we do something over here, what's going on? So you have to be very curious and very interested in how you form a niche. And all my businesses are niches. Even black marketing itself is very much a niche. People say to me, like, oh, you only target LinkedIn, isn't that dangerous? No, that's a strength. Because there's lots of other social media agencies out there who do Facebook and Instagram and don't even do LinkedIn because they don't consider it. And it's B2B, it's a bit more difficult, it's a bit more not as sexy. You don't win awards, you know, for being the best LinkedIn campaign where you do on Facebook and Instagram, even if their campaigns were terrible. So I quickly realized that LinkedIn is very much a niche. So I love niches. And I love looking at how you can actually then exploit those niches elsewhere and benefit people as well.
Very good. So you don't have to restrict yourself by niching. It's an interesting mind, you know, that you clearly on your website say, you know, these are our brands.
Yes.
Whereas some classical advice would be, you know, just pick a theme and stick with that. I personally found that really a struggle because there are many interests that I have.
Yeah.
And I like to talk about different things across a broad spectrum. And how do I do that and still niche? But what you did was, no, this is one thing, this is another.
That's why we have 7 brands.
7 brands, right? Is that the limit? Because like 7 habits of highly effective people.
No. I could have 20 brands this time in 5 years' time.
Okay, very, very good. All right, so your key piece of self-regulation is keep yourself curious. I mean, you know, some people will go, well, doesn't that make you a tad intense? Do you not ever do you ever wind down? Or?
No, I would say I was very intense actually, but that I think is it's a key to being an entrepreneur. You have to have determination, you have to have resilience, you have to have very thick skin, especially with a brand like mine, which is very much what we'd call a Marmite brand, which is either you love me or you hate me, because I get as many advocates as I do haters, which is what you need for a brand. Talk about brand positioning, it's better to be talked about than never been talked about at all in terms of reputation and branding. So no, you've got to basically have that drive to go forwards, to try things, and yes, the intensity comes from that. But I think every entrepreneur is intense. You find me any entrepreneur that's a true entrepreneur who's growing businesses and trying new things, who's not an intense guy. Look at people like Elon Musk and people like that. These are intense people who basically are living every day and risking everything, which is what, going back to your early definition of entrepreneurialism, entrepreneurs risk. Which is why people who work at DBS or OCBC and basically have something on the side are not entrepreneurs, because they're not risking everything. They've got that catchment, oh, if it fails, I'm still employed by DBS. That's not entrepreneurialism.
A couple of local banks there. So you raise an important point, and again, you and I have spoken about this on camera. You know, the willingness to have as many detractors as supporters.
Yes.
And a lot of people, if your self-esteem is not yet solid, you know, we all like to be liked, right? And social media in itself can be a trap for that. You know, teenagers going, oh, you know, I lost an Instagram follower or 1,000 Instagram followers, or measuring their self-worth.
Yeah.
I have an opinion on this, but I'm interested in your opinion on this. You know, how do people get solid first or should they get solid first before they expose themselves?
Very good question. I would say yes, you have to have confidence in yourself. I've never lacked confidence. In fact, many people have said I'm overconfident when I didn't have the ability to actually be confident. But even at school, for example, I made sure I wasn't part of one particular clique. I was part of, like, I could be useful and negotiate with every single person. I was the guy that basically beat up the school bully because he picked on me and went, no, not even this, you're out of here, mate. And then suddenly you get respect because of that. But I was very much a person that wasn't stood with one clique, which made me more self-aware about my own person. And I knew pretty early on I was pretty comfortable in my own space, which is very important to be a leader and to try different things. When I went down to London, definitely people said to me, oh, how do you leave Newcastle? How do you leave your friends? They're like, it's pretty easy. If you want to basically make yourself you've got to go to London. You've got to go basically where the action is and the business is. Same reason why I came to Singapore. So you've got to be self-aware in terms of that. And yes, you do have to build up your resilience about it and understand that it does not matter what people say about you. You have to believe in yourself. You have to be true to yourself and believe in yourself. If you're so weak that basically someone making a comment to you on social media or on an opinion piece or shouting at you in a talk, for example, is going to make you cry, do not become an entrepreneur.
Okay, well that was unambiguous, wasn't it? Right? Is get it together. The famous British poet Oscar Wilde said, the only thing worse than bad publicity is no publicity.
It's true.
Is that
It's true.
And also when he went to New York and asked, "Is there anything to declare?" he said, "Only my genius," which is kind of a fairly healthy self-esteem.
Indeed,
right
yes.
there. All right. Funny story. A lot of people think Singapore is very, very straight, and I came through Changi Airport, which you mentioned, and I came in through early one morning, and they said anything to Claire, and I did that, and I said, I quoted Oscar Wilde, and I said, "Only my genius," and the security guard said, "That'll be in your luggage then, will it?" So sarcasm is alive and well even in Singapore. Okay. All right, so fabulous. So you've got this sense of self-confidence, and you're projecting that into the future. You're prepared to take the risk.
Yeah.
You're prepared to to take that feedback. You're resilient, but along the way you must have had some setbacks that challenged that you went, well, maybe I was really wrong there. Could you share a
Totally. I mean, I had
example?
a major one in Singapore. My first job here, which I got through LinkedIn by networking. After a couple of years, feeling quite happy with myself and quite almost kind of arrogant with myself, I decided to put a blog out because I did one blog which got 100,000 views. Thought this is easy, this blogging business. This was 6 or 7 years ago. Did a blog about taxi drivers, and I had a completely different reaction. The moment I knew it went wrong is because all the comments started coming on, going, "You're completely wrong with this, Chris. You've misjudged this completely." I'm going, right. No, I can't take this back, can I? I'm screwed now. So I even then tried to make the most of it by saying, this is my opinion, these are the facts, these are the case studies. But I got 90% of people basically saying this is very negative, and then I got put on the front page of the new paper here as being the most most hated cab passenger in Singapore. I was on Channel News Asia, I was in radio and TV. People were talking about my column and actually having a go at me, saying, who's this expat comes over here, who does he think he is, telling us our taxi drivers are terrible, and giving examples of various countries around the world where their taxi drivers were much more terrible than Singaporean taxi drivers.
Yes, that's whataboutism, though, isn't it?
It is, yes. So I got fired. I got terminated. And bearing in mind I was on a PEP at the time, and I basically, which is a pass which you have for basically 6 months without a job. I was a bit more secure than if I'd been on an employment pass, but I had just applied for my permanent residency as well. And I'm going, oh no, I might not get my permanent residency here because I might read that blog. And so I got fired. But what I found was there was no publicity that was bad publicity, because all the people I approached, again on LinkedIn, saying, I've been fired for this reason, I'd like to come and talk to you about how I can help you. Said, oh yeah, you're Chris Reed. Oh yeah, I wouldn't have said what you said out in the public, but I'd have a beer with you and say the same thing. I go, okay. So you get on with people. People knew my name. So people associate me with controversy, but also a salient point, and basically said, I agree with what you're saying, but I wouldn't have actually said it. So it actually helped me get my jobs after that, and my PR came through about a month later. And the first thing I did was text my ex-boss, who said to me, you'll never get your PR now you've been fired. So I got my PR. So it was basically a very downtime, because I'd just been fired, and I thought, what am I going to do now? I've only been in Singapore for a couple of years. But also it was a realisation that you can push it quite hard, because there's limits to what you can push when you work for somebody else. And that was the point with that one. I worked with many Singaporeans, for example, who did not like the fact I'd said this. They complained to the boss in London. The guy in London basically just saw a front page newspaper and said, he's out of here. That's bad publicity, bad association for me. So that's, again, another reason why you should always work for yourself. You're aware, like I am, that I like controversy, and I like putting my opinions out there. You can't work for somebody else. You have to work for yourself.
Wow. Okay. I have one positive story about taxi drivers. The other night, it's dark in the back of a taxi, and I asked him to stop, not at the taxi stop, so I could jump out to join my wife at a bar where she was networking, and I accidentally paid him $100 instead of $10. Now, you would think I'd never see that again. The only reason I can tell you this story is I didn't even know I'd given him $100. He tapped me on the shoulder. I'm standing at this outside bar, and he said, "Oh, did you just catch my cab?" And I turned around and I said, "Well, yeah." He said, "Well, you gave me $100 instead of $10." So,
Wow.
So there are some very.
Wow.
So,
Oh,
there's
yeah.
I can't say bad things about taxi drivers ever again. However bad they are, there's the exception that proves the rule. Fabulous. So your learning there is, you can push it. But did you not have a crisis of faith there for a moment and go, I've really screwed up?
Oh, totally. Without a shadow of a doubt. I was here without a job. I was here with my PR pending. I was here going, I might have to be going back to the UK with my tail between my legs here. This could be all over. Because at the time as well, the atmosphere was quite toxic. You can imagine the 2010 election here, where there was an anti-foreigner sentiment. And there was 2 other examples of people being kicked out of the country for saying things about, there was one Malaysian woman, for example, Australian woman got kicked back to Australia, and one English guy here who very notoriously said about how big his car was and so forth as well, who also got kicked out of the country. And I was basically the third person there going, okay, this could easily, the saving grace was I wasn't making anything derogatory from a racial point of view or a cultural point of view. I was saying about the country in general. And that's my lawyer who had said to me, you've given, and I also gave 15 examples about what had gone wrong and why I thought taxi drivers were very poor here, how they could be improved. And he basically said to me, you can't be slandered, you basically can't be taken out of the country, you can't be basically taken apart, because basically what you said isn't about culture, it's about the country in general and how they train the taxi drivers. So you made a salient point. He was a Singaporean, so my lawyer was Singaporean here. I made sure I had a very good Singaporean lawyer to basically look after me. But you basically become more aware of what you can say and what you can't say, and basically the legal ramifications of it and the cultural ramifications of it.
Okay, because social media these days is a fierce place.
Yes.
People control you. That somebody's in their basement on a computer and they're courageous. People will say to you online things that they wouldn't say to you with your mohawk or me with my bald head to our faces for fear of some recrimination. Not that you would get it from me, but I just look like a nightclub bouncer. But I got into trouble with a post, and let's talk about this one. I have an issue. As a self-leader, know who you are, know what you stand for, and I was talking about politeness as a social construct, right?
Yeah.
So why I believe that we have politeness is because we could, each of us have to be polite if we don't know each other. We're different cultures because we don't know whether somebody's armed. We don't know what the social norms are, and so we are polite. But once we've done that, once we've got past that politeness, I'm looking for an authentic conversation. Is this real? Let's get real. Let's take it apart. And so I'm a bit down on overuse of politeness. I actually think we can hide a lot of passive aggressiveness behind politeness. So I wrote a post saying, politeness is a social construct and it only goes so far. But a lot of people love politeness. And so I was impolite by attacking politeness. What do you say to that?
Well, especially in Singapore as well, where they have the nice society or the be kind society and that kind of thing. They're very big on, you see posters here you'd never see in the UK or America about being kind, about being gentle, about letting someone out of an MRT first. So I think that is part of the culture here. So whilst I agree with your point, and I think I agree totally, people can be very passive aggressive, but in terms of being polite when they have no intention of being polite whatsoever, that's hiding where is who they are, and that's very much I think a cultural thing.
Well, we're both British, and of course you make a really good point. Is British for you're talking
interesting? Yes, interesting means you're not interesting at all. I disagree.
Let me consider that, which means I'm never going to give it another thought.
Yes. I'll come back to you on that one. Yes.
So once I absolutely agree. But I think being I'm not against being nice to people on the subway because they are strangers. We don't have a relationship. I think once we have a relationship, whether that's with our spouses or with our friends or with our audience, I think we owe it to people to turn up and then share a perspective. But that takes a level of courage, as
And most people don't want to do that. There's a reason why on social media there's a rule called 1990, which is 1% of people on social media share. They actually create something to share. 99% do like, comment, and share on that post, and 90% of people do nothing at all. Nothing at all. So only 1% of people actually bother being a leader on social media, because it takes courage. A lot of the people we actually talk about when I do my LinkedIn talks, they do not want to be that 1%. They're quite happy being the 9%, much prefer to be the 90%. Especially if they're not a leader themselves, not a CEO, or they're maybe not a CEO who's confident about what they're doing or does not want to be the face of the company, or culturally wants to share that contribution around the company, for example, especially in places like Singapore, where culturally the CEO is not normally the swashbuckling CEO at the start, like an Elon Musk figure. They don't really exist in Singapore. So you got to be culturally aware about where you are, can be a leader, and what you can share, but also aware of the fact that most people do not want to be that place.
And yet we're overwhelmed with content,
Yep.
right? We're submerging in content. Once upon a time, as you say, you write a blog and you could get that attention.
Yeah.
And yet now there's so much trying to get heard above all this noise is difficult. So that 1% is creating a lot of content.
It is, yeah. So you have got 7 million people potentially online. So
so that 1% is
a lot of content. Yeah,
it's a lot of content. So what's your advice here to somebody within an organisation or wanting to start their own business? Is it too late to get online?
No, you can reinvent yourself. You can get online. You can build a following. You can build it through content, video content, doing things like this, interviewing people, authentic content. It's never too late. Never too late.
So and you can rise
very quickly just by doing things, just by doing things. And if you do things on a consistent basis, people like what you're doing. People will follow you. Simple as that. But it's all about the quality of your content.
So what makes quality? That's the
that's the $64 billion question, isn't it? Because what's quality to you is different to what's quality to me.
Yes. Well, I have a friend who builds data centers, and I joke with him. I said, surely 1 out of 3 data centers are just for cat videos, or cute penguins. I know. So it. Let's look at that a little bit more accurately. So if you have to have some thought leadership in your domain, is that not true? Right. So if
you have to have an opinion.
Yeah.
I mean, it goes back to what we said originally. You have to have an opinion. If you don't have an opinion, people are going to go, nothing there. If you have an opinion, at least people can disagree or agree passionately. You can start a debate. And that's what I love about LinkedIn. The debates on LinkedIn are quite interesting and responsible because they're not anonymous. What annoys me about things like Facebook and Instagram and even places like Twitter and Umbrella, for example, is that people are anonymous, and therefore you're having a disagreement with somebody who you don't know if they're the CEO of a bank or whether they are just basically a salesperson or just basically someone having a bad day or whatever it happens to be. Whereas on LinkedIn, you see who they are, who you both know, how long you've been connected for, what their standing is, everything. So you can have a reasonable debate, you have a professional debate. That's why it's more professional. But you have to have an opinion. If you don't have an opinion, why you even bother out there sharing anything at all? You have an opinion.
Yeah. Well, having a voice is a key part of self-leadership, whether that's on social media or in a board meeting or just in the huddle at your business.
I agree.
Having a voice is essential, and practicing that voice. And when we grew up, we were in England. You were told, you shouldn't discuss sex, politics, or religion at the dinner table. But I actually have a viewpoint that perhaps we should have learnt to talk about sex politics, because then we could have intelligent debates. I've been keenly watching the Canadian psychologist Jordan Peterson, who has created a huge uproar because he pushed back against using gender-neutral pronouns. He said, you can't force me to do that, and the gender debate is going down the wrong track on this way. And of course he received a huge backlash. But what I was impressed about is his way to calmly debate, to not take it personally, to not get taken off by the straw man arguments or the false equivalences, the various cognitive biases, but to listen very carefully and respond intelligently. Do you think we lack the debate skills on social media?
Without a doubt, without a shadow of a doubt. You just need to see the amount of anonymous trolls or people basically being trolled for no particular reason whatsoever. They disagree, or they're in the wrong program, or they happen to have the wrong shirt on or something, or they have a mohawk, or whatever it happens to be, and people get trolled for absolutely nothing. And it's like, why? I mean, there was the guy from Black Mirror who was in the Bandersnatch episode of Christmas on Netflix, and he was being trolled to death on Twitter so much that he basically took himself off Twitter. He said, I can't deal with this. And he was just an actor in a program. It's like, how can an actor in a program get trolled to death for something he's not even in charge of doing? It's like, that's just ridiculous. So yeah, I think that's just taking it too far. But I think that's just society in general. You can't do very much about society. But again, you can pick and choose your platforms. So I'm not on Twitter, I'm not on Instagram, not on any of those platforms. I'm only on LinkedIn. Because if I want to talk to somebody, I want to talk to someone either like this, like I'm English, so I'll go for a beer with somebody, have a glass of wine with somebody, go for a coffee with somebody, and do it face to face like this. I'll go anywhere in the world and meet people, or I want to talk to someone on LinkedIn when I can actually see who they are, so we can have a real conversation. And that's what I think I was very much brought up about, is like having conversations. My granddad's always said to me, ask more questions than you should be talking. Think about them more than you're thinking about yourself. Listen more than you actually have your own voice. Actually, as a talker like me, and I'm like you as well, it's very hard. I have to check myself. And I try and get someone else to talk more than I'm actually talking, and deliberately say, no, don't, stop. Ask a question. And that's self-awareness, and the fact that I can just go on forever if I'm not careful, and people can lead me down that path, especially if I've had a few drinks. So you need to basically be tempered that it's a two-way thing.
Right. So you listed a few things. Listen, don't talk so much, ask questions, and these are timeless principles of communication. So what in this journey? We don't know how old you are now. So you started at 30. You want to share?
I'm 48. I'm 48.
48. All right. So what do you think some of your biggest learnings along your career have been, in terms of applying that self-leadership in context, understanding? What do you think some of your biggest learnings have been?
I mean, the biggest learning is definitely take risks, and the biggest one, I would say, both my professional and my personal basis. I mean, I'm divorced 3 times, and that's not something you should be very proud of, but it's the fact that I'm very self-aware of the fact that I was not happy, I was not making my partner happy, I had young children, and I thought, I don't want these people to grow up in an unhappy situation, therefore I'm going to leave. And my parents and my people I knew, and her, obviously, my ex-wives, basically said, you can't do this, this is terrible, think about the children, think about me, think about all the rest of it. But I'm saying, I'm fundamentally not happy, this isn't going to change, we've tried this, that and the other, it's not going to change, and I only have one life. I don't want to be stuck in a marriage for 20 years or 15 years being unhappy and being one of those guys who go down the pub and moaning about their wives. I'd like to be down the pub actually talking about how great you are and how wonderful you are and how much I love you and how much I appreciate that. So I've applied that to both my professional career and my personal life. To, I would say, my detriment, both financially, because I have 3 ex-wives and I'm paying money for maintenance. So, before I even start the day, I would go like that money, thousands of dollars down, but I would give that money to have the freedom I have and the happiness I have now, and the ability to be able to choose what I want to do. And I have great relationships with my kids as a result of it, because they haven't seen those bad points of our relationships and 2 parents arguing, because I removed myself in that situation. But as a result of that, I spent more quality time, I would say, with those with the children, to actually have a better relationship with them one-on-one. And I actually have a better relationship with my son at 18 than my father had with me at the same age. Much better relationship as a result of it. So I'm very much aware of the fact that I have no patience, and I'm not very good at relationships, clearly, and I need to get better at that.
Well, that's a huge bit of self-awareness right there. I'm on wife number 3, and and this is the last one. My wife, of course, says she will not be divorced; she will be a widow. And with her being Brazilian, you want to believe her on that. But I agree with you. A difficult decision to make, very painful decision to make, whether it's financially, emotionally. Yeah. But you have to be true to yourself, and you have to be true to the other partner. And this is a key element of self-leadership that we haven't got into with anybody else. It's just the me, not me boundary. Is that a relationship is 2 strong people coming together and agreeing to be together. It's not 2 people looking for completion from the other person. It's not Jerry Maguire when Tom Cruise says, "You complete me," to Renée Zellweger, because we have to complete ourselves and then be in a relationship with somebody else.
You have to be happy and confident in yourself before you can go relationship with somebody else.
So work on yourself and then work on your relationship. Right?
I agree.
The best thing you can do for any partner is to work on yourself. Right? And be the best version of you for them.
Yeah, totally.
For yourself first, and then you will be the best version of yourself for them. Unfortunately, Hollywood society tells us this myth of romantic love, that there is this perfect person for us, and if this person isn't perfect in our relationship, there must be something wrong with them. Instead of, we have to grow, develop a level of self-awareness, self-acceptance, and modify our own behaviors. Right? So I'm sure you've got the learning there. And thank you to your father and your grandfather for the entrepreneurship that's passed on. You need to check out Chris Reed. We're going to put up some links on his black marketing and his other 6 brands, Rockstar. I too do some work for getting some more female speakers on the platforms, and I took the pledge last year or the year before to never appear on a panel on a stage with all male. I think I was one of the first to take the pledge, because we need that gender diversity in terms of thought, in terms of, and I'm prepared to stand up and have an opinion on that and join you on this, even if I get trolled on that.
And you will be.
And I will be. And so thank you very much for being honest, being very direct, giving us a perspective. Whether you agree or not, you know where Chris stands, and that's his brand. I think you'll agree. Thank you very much.
Pleasure.
Chris Reed.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you.